26th episode or
26?
Yeah.
So we should be live on Facebook, waiting on YouTube. All right, we should be up and live on both.
welcome to the 26th episode of the Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Gio and Dave. How is everybody?
Hey.
Really good, thanks.
All right, and what is today's topic, Dave?
So today we are doing what everyone else on YouTube in the world is doing, and that you will see in various formats on our channel. We're doing kind of a wrap up and final thoughts on the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus show. We started a little bit of this and we had to stop ourselves last week because I think there's a lot of opinions and a lot of things that there were from, what were we on last time? Part 5 when we last were here, and
Part
4.
Part 4
1
even.
to
We
4,
hadn't
yeah.
even seen 5 or 6 yet. Oh my gracious! So there's a lot to talk about today. Oh, and as always, people who are joining us in the chat is ask your questions, make your comments. What do you think? Feel free to tell us the agree, the disagree. But we also want to kind of get to, did our predictions come true? Were we totally off base and totally wrong? And our predictions come true? Were we totally off base and totally wrong? And I think it's a lot of that.
So who'd like to go first?
Anybody? Okay,
How
I'll
about,
go.
how about you, Dave?
Okay. So I think 2 possible things that I've said going forward may have kind of come to be, which is I think we're gonna get I think we will get more Reva, or at least we need to get more Reva to wrap up, because her arc didn't end. She's still out there. There's so many questions, possibilities, things is about that. That story's got to be told in some medium at some point. And we did get what almost seemed like to Rebels fans a fan service kind of thing, which is we got to see Hayden Christensen as Vader with at least part of the helmet removed. So we got to see that thing. But anything and everything else that I think I would have thought was going to happen, not really so much. I mean, obviously the whole kind of bait and switch that you thought this was going to be all about Obi-Wan watching Luke. No. Did I think that was a good thing? Yeah, I thought that was really nice. The actress that played young Leia was amazing. The switch up, and I really think that in the new canon and the sequel trilogy, the fact that it makes so much more sense now that Leia named her child Ben. I think that it's nice for us to see that Obi-Wan wasn't just sitting in the desert being a hermit this entire time. He was watching after both of the children. It's not just the one singular thing. So I enjoyed those things, but we won't get to further the other things that I didn't quite enjoy. But that's just the prediction part. Is it was unexpected, but not for the most part badly unexpected.
Sure, I think that's all totally fair. Yeah. I think it's a mixture of things that we've seen in previous Disney Plus shows and Star Wars shows that it can very much weigh in on our opinions and how we were maybe looking forward to this Obi-Wan series, for better or worse. I think that it's good to have had some more focus on Obi-Wan. Though on the flip side, Star Wars also does need to at least play with the idea of introducing new characters and new stories, and whether that's going to take place in the future in very different parts of the timeline, we'll see. But I see that as a good thing, that in terms of story-wise, you're trying to balance the board a little more and have characters from different parts of the galaxy and different factions and having their own stories. Whether or not there was space in the 6-part limited series for that in Obi-Wan is something that's definitely up for debate. But I would say that at least moving on from the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan was the star of his show for the most part. So that's definitely one huge positive takeaway. And the way I saw these final 2 episodes, because we kind of got into pretty heavy detail on some of the things we didn't like in the first 4. I think that I looked at the final 2 episodes just trying to appreciate what they gave us, whether it was kind of fan servicey or justifiable from a story point of view, and trying to enjoy like the ambient parts of Star Wars, maybe like the visuals, the music. I think they used a better balance of sound and audio and the soundtrack in these final 2 episodes that made it feel more cinematically Star Wars for a couple of scenes, which I appreciated. Given what we had in the 4 episodes, there wasn't so much room they had left to go. I guess you could say parts of it were predictable, but in a kind of like a gentle, here's the kind of comfort food of Star Wars that we know a lot of you love, and is the kind of superficially some of the things that really draw some of us to Star Wars and to the Star Wars films and to the franchise as a whole. So let's give that back, and hopefully it doesn't come across too much like just a little checklist that we're checking off as, okay, we've got this cameo and we've got this line and we've got this here and there, because you can really be cynical about it, and there's no reason not to be. It's just content for us to take in however we want to do it. But I tried to just border on more emphasizing the positive things and seeing, okay, what they did do well and what they could improve going forward, rather than just what's going on with the story, what's going on with the kind of this thing that was a problem a few scenes ago that is suddenly resolved, or this kind of jumping forward. And we can get into more about that in the talking of the final 5th and 6th episodes, if that's
I think we'll get there. I think we're gonna go there. But just to start, did you make any predictions on what was going to happen? Did you have any expectations in the beginning that were correct? Any that weren't correct?
Just going back to our previous episode, I think I deliberately tried to skirt away from predictions so as to just manage expectations a little bit. And I think some of the things that you'd suggested, both of you, definitely made sense, and didn't want to repeat it. But just if I try and rewind to initial thoughts, feelings from the trailer and the teaser and so on, although it doesn't feel like it necessarily makes sense from an overall story perspective to have Obi-Wan go on this kind of side adventure, and the very premise of having him meet Vader and so on, does clash with what already worked quite well in the original films. And Disney has this habit so far with Star Wars of wanting to fill in every little detail to make things connect. So seeing that with things like in Solo and Rogue One, it wasn't going to be a big problem for me like it might have been previously. And I was really glad to see that. However, kind of tangential it could have been, that there was a real reason. There was an actual mission for Obi-Wan to protect Leia, who is as important to Star Wars as Luke. So they justified it in my eyes, and I thought that was something that would be hard to justify without bringing in a legacy character. And we got a lot of different locations and looks at parts of the galaxy, which I was hoping for, given that we had a few snapshots in the trailer of Dayu, of the satellite of Mustafar Nur with the fortress of the Inquisitors. And I'm glad we spent some time there, even if the actual scenes didn't really execute the way I would have liked, ideally. So yeah, some positives, definitely some positives there.
All right, Catherine?
My prediction that the show would continue to be god awful bore out very well. It's just terrible. I don't. Here, I got something here.
I was waiting for the skewering, so yeah, but it's good. Please,
this is the Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith comics by Charles Soule.
Yep.
And he really gets into Vader's psyche in this series, particularly with why Palpatine tasks him to build his castle on Mustafar. It's like you have to live with your failure of what you did here. And you really get more into what Vader's thoughts are and how he's been thinking about Obi-Wan and brewing about the choices that he made in episode 3 and all this kind of stuff. And for a series which was honestly marketed around the idea that you're going to have another showdown between Obi-Wan and Vader, they didn't layer any of it with any real character moments, like, at all. And like, even with Obi-Wan, you read the journals of Ben Kenobi, all the, his past with Satine and his past with, and none of this is in there. And it's just, again, it's relentless plot with no story. And they do strange things, like they wrote themselves into this corner where, once again, Obi-Wan is leaving Vader to die. And it's like, well, understandably, he thought he was going to die on Mustafar, but this time it's like, no, why are you leaving him here? It's a bit like, why are you writing yourselves into that corner? The Reva character makes no sense whatsoever. It's like, wait a minute. So you're telling me now in the 5th episode that her motivation is that she wants to get back at Vader for what he did to the younglings. Okay. Well, she's had plenty of time to do that in this series and in the 10 years preceding the series, most definitely. But once Vader finally cuts her off, and don't get me started on her ability to survive getting stabbed by Vader in the temple and then stabbed again. And the fake death thing's going a little too far here, but once Vader cuts her off and she's no longer in the Empire's good graces, what's the point in her going after Luke and trying to kill him exactly? And she gets there and it's like, okay, she has that flashback. She can't bring herself to do it. Okay, but you were ready to torture a child like last week's episode. So the inconsistencies and, the generality that in a mini series where they can't wrap up a character's story, it's like you would get closure and some more answers on Reva if this were a movie. But because of the possibility that, we could do more seasons, we could do spinoffs, I'm thinking, we have like 6 hours almost worth of material here, and the character was sort of like quasi abandoned. It's like she throws the saber down, which doesn't really mean much because she's already been kicked out of the Empire pretty much, but then she literally disappears. It's like, wait, where'd she go? It's like, I thought that was a little odd. I thought, okay, the motif with Obi-Wan training Anakin in the 5th episode, that was nice, how they're leading up to, what they're talking about there. It's like, okay, but even then it's like they're trying to key up, this is like an adventure. Like, if you wanted to tell a plot-driven adventure story and you got Ewan and Hayden back, then why not just do a live-action series set in the Clone Wars? It's like, just do that. Because, like, I still don't know why Leia was in this show. It's like Bail Organa would never ask Obi-Wan to do that. I mean, she was kidnapped by one Inquisitor, so Bail Organa would have just asked the Empire. Tarkin would have had a whole fleet of Star Destroyers on top of this thing, because they didn't know the Inquisitors took her. He would have had bounty hunters on it. And how he's using the comm link to say, Obi-Wan, you haven't checked in. And I'm like, Bail, you wouldn't be this dumb. And then when they finally bring in Qui-Gon, and I'm like, no, just stop. You can't. It's like it's been 10 years and he's only just now. Like Yoda says, even, I'm going to teach you how to commune with Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
And we get the impression that now here we are 10 years later, and this is like the first time he's met him, but he's cut himself, Obi-Wan sort of cut himself off from the Force, sort of, in the early, that they hinted at earlier in the season. and yet he's still intent on training Luke. And I'm like, well, how exactly are you going to train Luke if you're cut off from the Force? And when he meets Qui-Gon, it's like, how are you not having this conversation with Qui-Gon about what happened to Anakin? Now, I could buy it that Obi-Wan let Anakin live if he had consulted with Qui-Gon first and Qui-Gon insisted, no, you have to trust this kind of thing.
Right.
But again, it's not really there. It just felt like a pointless cameo at the very last second, just for the sake of, hey, look, it's Qui-Gon. And with Leia, introducing her as a kind of tech genius who can hack the door, and I'm thinking, if she did that, she could have fixed the hyperdrive of the Millennium Falcon. She could have fixed
I think that,
she could have
yeah,
hotwired the door to the shield generator on the Endor. It's like, so the writing's all over the place. There's nothing to the Vader Obi-Wan thing. All the interpersonal, even with Owen, when like he in this final episode where you hint that there's still like a relationship there. It's like, why are we not diving more into that? Because at the end of episode 3, you get that tiny hint that Owen doesn't really want to talk to Obi-Wan when he hands over the baby. Like Beru is there, she's got a big smile on her face, but Owen is looking out at the sunset because he knows what's coming up. It's like, yes, I'm going to raise him as my son, but he knows Obi-Wan is going to come back and try and take this kid back. That's like, why is that relationship and conflict not really explored at all in this series? Because even Leia, it's like, okay, they're all so proud of themselves for keeping the secret that Leia came back, great. But other than her just being kind of, okay, the precocious kid who's a bit inconsistent in the writing, what was the point in doing that? It's like, I don't, it's like you could do a young Leia series if you want. That'd be great. Like, especially with teen Leia or something, like cast somebody like Anya Taylor-Joy and do an awesome Leia series. I'd be totally down for that. But it's like, of all the things that an Obi-Wan Kenobi series, especially building up him Vader, could possibly be about, you could have even had a reason to bring Ahsoka into this, because she also ties into her her feelings of having lost Anakin and lost that relationship. But Leia doesn't really fit in here. She's there for the sake of the main plot, but that's all this show felt like, just relentless plot and no character and nothing about Obi-Wan that's unique to Obi-Wan and his emotional, psychological struggles. Same with Vader, as I pointed out in the Charles Soule comics. None of that is there. And I think that all boils down to the fact that they had way too many writers on the show, and especially that they had a writer who didn't even feel the need to watch Revenge of the Sith after he got the job. I mean, Pablo Hidalgo had to tell him that, oh, actually, Obi-Wan does know that Anakin is Vader because of the scene when he sees the hologram in the Jedi Temple of, Anakin pledging himself to Palpatine and being dubbed, Rise Lord Vader. So I don't know what the impetus was to this, because I had high hopes for the series because they brought in one director. Deborah Chow did some of the best episodes of The Mandalorian. But then this was just, it just felt like a whole lot of nothing, and it could have easily been a very great story. And again, if you want to do a fun action story like they tried to do here, then just do a Clone Wars set series. Everybody, you got Tamura Morrison, who's clearly still eager to do Star Wars, loves Star Wars, great ambassador for Star Wars. Hayden Christensen, who was excited to come back, even though they didn't really use him very much. And Hayden is the one who even said he went back and watched all the movies, all the TV shows. I'm like, great, use that in the writing so you can really get into Vader's psyche some more. It's like, and Ewan loves to come back. He even wants to do another season. Well, then just do Clone Wars. It's like, I don't care if they don't want to spend the money on de-aging technology. I will forgive them for that. If you just do like a live action Clone Wars series, if you want to tell an action story. But at that point in Obi-Wan's life, it's like, that wouldn't be an action story. That would be a very deep, personal type of story. And it's just nothing there. I mean, it's not as bad structurally as the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But I felt there
Definitely
was
not.
a bit more of a sensible through line, at least with the Boba Fett character in that, whereas here it's just kind of, okay, Obi-Wan, we're going to go off on this adventure. And yeah, so it's like, just so disappointed.
Okay, so I was trying to be nice to begin with, and I think I did enjoy it. I think more than you did, because a lot of the plot points that that bother you, I'm letting my head canon get around and not bother me quite as much. Yes, Qui-Gon coming in just at the end after 10 years. Yeah, that was a bother me. That was a fan service that should have happened long ago. I got and I accepted and I thought it was a good thing in the audio drama, the Obi-Wan audio drama set immediately when he first got to Tatooine, that he was trying to commune with Qui-Gon, and it wasn't happening. I thought that was a good thing. But yeah, 10 years had passing, and so what I want to know is if that is going to be how that's going to go down, and that's now canon, and that's the deal. I want something before this series and after the other series to know what happened to make him completely cut himself off from the Force. He was still being loyal. He was still there. He was still watching Luke. I want you to give me a reason why he got to that point. So that would be what I would want to see in a season 2. They will not give it to us. It won't happen. That will not be what they do. But that would be what I want to see. And I didn't see like Leia as the tech genius or whatever, is like, I glossed over that as like they put her in there to try and open the door because she was the only one big enough to fit, you know, and she didn't do it. She sat in there for like an hour going, just pushing wires to the side, and then go, oh, look, there's a dot that I can easily remove on my droid with the glaring red eyes. A lot of this was oversimplified for TV. I mean, I enjoyed the directing. I enjoyed, you know, the new, for the most part. I mean, there were budgetary issues that I keep talking about where, like, look, it's a fluorescent light, or, you know, oh, look, that's the volume. That was, and I really think that they may have taken the Tatooine sets and they may have completely redone the Mos Espa sets from Book of Boba Fett, because it looked like the town was pretty much the exact same layout, that they just moved some crap around and redone the set decoration. And I think that was a little too obvious. So yeah, some budgetary things, which I assume the budget went to, let's see, Ewan, Hayden, Liam Neeson. Well, there you go. There's the budget for your series. So even bothering with the deep fake guy, nope, not paying you for that this time. No, we'll just put in old Hayden. It's fine. So yeah, it had its issues. It's had its enjoyable moments. But I'm trying to let a lot of some of those little things go and make them up on my own, and maybe make them better in my mind. I'm enjoying it for what it was, and hoping for better coming down, that we will get this more content, but I don't know that. I know that that's not what we'll get. My biggest gripe, biggest ridiculous gripe for it. Okay, introduce the Reva character. Fine. Yep. New people. Okay, great. Yeah. She did not know. Like you said, oh, I'm all down. Why are you still going after Luke? Why you were torturing children before? Is you do not get a redemption arc. Nope. Is I'm sitting there the entire time when when Obi-Wan shows back up, I want like a Dooku moment. I'm going, do it. Is no. And I thought when she lays the saber down, I thought maybe she was gonna like Han Solo herself. It's like, that character knows too much. She knows about Luke, she knows about Leia, she knows about Anakin, and she knows about Obi-Wan. You need to go.
Yeah.
There's too much of a loose end. You know too much. You can do too much to the wrong people, the wrong place. You know where he is. You know Owen and Beru, which, by the way, my favorite part of the last episode, I think, is Aunt Beru pulling out the arsenal. It's like, let's go. And Owen's looking at her like, you've been hiding blasters behind the like, yes.
She's been ready
let's
for
go.
that. Yeah.
See, that's something we gotta
Yeah.
know more about, the Brew and Owen
Yeah.
relationship surrounding that. And
Yeah,
trying
that kind of
to-
dynamic.
and then
Definitely.
Luke, it's like, okay, I like that Luke doesn't know that the Inquisitors are chasing him because you don't want to mess with that aspect of the canon. But at the same time, it's like Luke is portrayed almost like a total simp in this series compared to Leia. And it's like when Obi-Wan says goodbye to Leia, oh, you're courageous, you're amazing, and all this type of stuff. And it feels like he's breaking the fourth wall. Like, are you talking about Leia, or are you just talking about the whole women in general thing? But then when he goes to meet Luke, it's like, now let's just let him be a kid.
But that kind of bears itself out in Star Wars, because Leia is like leading a planet and has been low-key leading the rebellion from what we've seen in Rebels, and Luke is still playing with his little T-16 Skyhopper making vroom vroom noises at 18.
Yeah.
So
Luke's still got skills
it
that they didn't look into. And
Hey, he was posing, shadow steering in the first episode pretty well. Ready to try some spinning tricks.
But before we get to you, Gio, I've been holding off a lot. We've got several comments here. Dale is going like, Obi-Wan didn't just leave Vader to die. He knows Anakin's still in there. He can't kill Anakin. He talked to him, and Anakin kind of resolved him. I don't know that I agree with that one, because I thought that was that when Vader said, I killed Anakin, is like, he's done. It's like, nope, that's Vader.
But even Obi-Wan acknowledges it. He's like, then you really are dead or whatever. And it's like, yeah, and everything that Vader's been doing. It's like, like you said, Dooku got to do it. It's like, because again, it would be fine if they had done all the Qui-Gon stuff earlier and really had that be a significant part of the series to dive into, because that would be a fascinating conversation to have, because they hinted at it in the Mortis trilogy when he sees what either was an apparition of Qui-Gon and might not have been his Force ghost, when Qui-Gon's trying to tell him to just trust in this. But the fact that he's cut himself off from the Force in this series shows that he's already lost any hope of that going on. And even saying that he's basically given up on him again, repeating the conversation they had at Mustafar. He says, you were my brother, I loved you. And now he's saying, oh, then you're truly dead. But knowing now, the difference being he knows now all the other horrible things Vader has since gone on to do. And he just lets him go again. And it's like, well, that he's out here nearly captured Leia, that, Luke's in it, and you're like, same thing with Reva. Like, you're leaving this guy alive when he himself doesn't really believe in Anakin anymore. Like, he doesn't seem to believe in that prophecy, but he's letting him go again.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you're saying, is that I would have liked to have seen him communing with Qui-Gon before, and Qui-Gon telling him, I know he's horrible, he's evil, you have to leave him because I was wrong. He's not the chosen one, but the chosen one will come and fix this. You are not destined to fulfill the prophecy and bring balance by destroying Vader.
Well, Anakin still is the chosen one, because he does fulfill the prophecy in the end. And he does, because the Jedi needed to be destroyed. That's why Darth Sidious wins. It's like the old Jedi was a broken system.
Whole other episode where we debate, is Anakin still the chosen one? Is Luke the chosen one? Who is the chosen? Is Grogu the chosen one? I don't know.
And all of those ideas came roaring back in episode 8. So yes, Anakin is still the chosen one, I bet. So let's write that down for a future episode title.
Okay. Is Anakin still the chosen one?
Is Anakin still the chosen one? Yeah.
But yeah, and let's see, what else have we got in here? It's like, Dale is still saying is someone will reach him. Obi-Wan can't, Ahsoka couldn't get to him. Luke or Leia may down the line do it. Not enough exposition on the Inquisitors, and I agree that if you're not a Rebels fan, speaking of which, if you want to hear more about the Inquisitors and you want to hear more about how the wrap-up of the Obi-Wan show directly affects Rebels, tomorrow night on Rebels Revisited, they will be doing an Obi-Wan wrap-up as well, and they will be diving a lot more into the Rebels specific episodes, so tune in for that one. you know. What else did we have here? Do you think Obi-Wan was at peace after Vader absolved him of blame? Do you think Anakin's turn could have been stopped by Obi-Wan, or was this happening with or without Obi-Wan? We discussed a little bit of that like long ago and far away, and the what if Qui-Gon had lived kind of deal. So fill in, go.
What do you think, Joe?
Neo is not the chosen one. There's one return, and it's not the Matrix.
Yeah, I think that it's a good question of who is the chosen one, what is the prophecy, what does that mean? But then again, it's almost as if the series is getting distracted by wider Star Wars and missing the opportunity that was given to have a character study of Obi-Wan, which I think is what definitely Catherine, you're totally right in seeing that is a huge blown opportunity, bringing all these original film actors back to have for a 6-part focus series would have been really good to see more from Anakin as well as from Obi-Wan. And then bring them to a logical conclusion, to have some sort of climax, to have an extra layer to their relationship, or the smoldering remains of it, because the end of the series did feel like almost a redux of the final third of Revenge of the Sith. It kind of like very rushed towards an Anakin versus Obi-Wan conflict, and still kind of withholding on the actual dynamic between the two characters. And then on the aspect of Obi-Wan having peace, I think the Charles Soule comic that you held up was a really fantastic idea in having, so that explored Vader and Vader's motivations and Vader's development from the very end of Revenge of the Sith, when he's mechanized completely, and what would be driving him. And that almost provided a really good structure that they could have used here for Obi-Wan. If you didn't have the idea of Obi-Wan cutting himself off from the Force, which I think they're probably going to just hand wave and say, okay, so that's how he remained hidden from Vader. He was below the radar of the Force as well as the Empire, remaining hidden on Tatooine. But the opportunity to have Qui-Gon give some kind of guidance and instruction to Obi-Wan, if not, like, this is what I would do, then at least reflections of what he could do in his time waiting for Luke to grow up and possibly take on the mantle of the chosen one, arguably, not arguably, and help, bring about the redemption of Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. I almost find it kind of weird to even say Darth Vader and Anakin, because it seems really they were hammering home the idea that Anakin Skywalker's personality is just gone and Darth Vader has replaced him. And from a end of the duel moment, it was fantastic to see that kind of line up, to see that Darth Vader was the reason for Anakin's destruction and the cause of it. And I totally get what Spencer was saying, in that does give some solace and some peace to Obi-Wan's character, knowing that he wasn't the fundamental flaw in Anakin, and it was almost brought about himself. But I think
see, here's where I think that goes weird, is that they prove with the flashback scene, with the dojo training flashback scene, Anakin's personality is not gone. They saw you, the dojo scene shows you that because Vader is Anakin, Obi-Wan can read him and predict him. He knows what he is going to do. Even in the fight in 6, I think, and I think I said this on Thursday night when we were doing the watch along, I would love to go back and rewatch the Battle on Mustafar, because I think somebody in fight choreography specifically swapped Obi-Wan and Anakin's fight choreography. Is Obi-Wan was on the offensive, attacking, and I think very similar, if not the exact same way, that Anakin did on Mustafar. You know, so you can see so much of the elements of Anakin that are still in Vader. They go ahead, you can't say, oh, I'm resolved, Anakin is no longer there, you are just Darth Vader, because of the other things that they're giving us. They're saying one thing and they're doing another, maybe.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at too, because superficially it ties up really nicely in terms of mirroring and so on, what we know the characters say later in the saga, but just on the basis of these episodes alone, it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense from a character point of view, as exactly as you're saying, because the part 5 was almost justifying how they kind of outfoxed Vader in him being very brash and full on, and headlights just rearing straight forward to his objective to achieve victory by any means without really thinking about things. And the flashback moments were cut between those moments of Vader up close with the mask, kind of looking or kind of invisibly emoting behind the helmet. So it was almost like we were led to believe Vader is remembering those moments as well. Being Anakin Skywalker, being somebody who is very belligerent and brash and not learning these lessons from Obi-Wan, and that's why he's being outsmarted again. But then to say that Anakin Skywalker is completely gone, it's a case of they're kind of saying, okay, so the identity of Anakin Skywalker is gone, replaced by Darth Vader, which superficially is what Yoda did say to Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. But I think there's a concern that you're taking things, like the creative team are taking things far too literally by saying, okay, so it's a case of one identity is just copy and pasted over another. Because then later on in the ultimate story of Star Wars is the redemption of Darth Vader. Return of the Jedi works because you have the return of Anakin Skywalker. There's something
literally
within
when
him.
they replace,
Right, and
Yeah.
in the Soleil Vader comics and in the new Star Wars comics, Vader is still, when he finds out that he might have kids, he's interested in that, because that his love for Padme is something that was a very Anakin thing, and that loss is what pushed him over the edge. But he's always lived with that. That's why on Mustafar, after he's killed the Separatists, he's crying because he knows he's done terrible things. He thinks he's done them for the right reasons. So that's true. You're right. They are taking it a bit literally, because the Anakin bit has always been with him. But I think when Vader's telling Obi-Wan that no, Anakin is dead, he's telling him that the person you knew me to be is dead. Such as when he says in the original movie, when I last saw you, I was but the learner, I am the master. I think he's talking about when I was last in your favor, or when we were last running together, not necessarily when we last literally saw each other. And so, yeah, they are taking it a bit literally, because again, they're clearly not consulting with the story group. They're not reading the comics to understand why Vader has done the things he has done and why he's still doing the things that he's doing. And it's like, oh, he's a different person. And like you guys just said, it's like, well, the redemption arc is proof that Anakin is still there.
Yeah.
And so, again, more ammunition to my point that you need to have fewer writers, because they had like 6 different writers on this show, and some of them were on all the episodes, others weren't. And I don't know what the logic was there. It was a bit odd. I mean,
It might have been
look no further than the first 2 seasons of True Detective. It's like you had the same sole writer on both seasons, but you have one whole director on season 1 and several directors on season 2. And season 2 is considerably worse than season 1. And you can see how when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, it starts causing problems. To get the consistency there, because that, especially after they did that great video showing how High Republic was well thought out and planned from the beginning, you would think where this series felt like they kind of wrote it flying by the seat of the pants, just kind of making a plot point. Like the whole 4th episode is basically a tribute to rescuing Leia and the Death Star. And I've actually pointed out this is 3 series now, where the 4th episode in a season is a rehash of that. They had the 4th episode of season 1 of Clone Wars, Destroy Malevolence. 4th episode of season 2 of Mandalorian, where they go into Gideon's supposedly abandoned facility where the Snoke doubles are, and now this series as well. And they've and that's fine. They've homaged that action bit a lot, but did it really need to be in this series? It's like it seems like they're prioritizing the wrong things from a storytelling perspective. So
I think in general there needs to be like it's getting too big too fast.
Yeah.
Is for all of
Yeah.
George's
Yeah,
issues with the prequels, okay? For George being George, it was George. There was that line that tied through. What made things like the Clone Wars and Rebels work was Dave not behind all of that and supervising what the through lines is what's going through. Is you need to, I know it's more work. It's the thing, if you do good, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau did an amazing job creating The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian was huge success, great. Oh, we've promoted them so they don't actually work on the story and stuff anymore and don't supervise it. No.
Yeah.
Is just because they do an amazing job doing it, let them keep doing it. Is that could, and I think, save a lot of this.
yeah, because it
it could have gotten even a better explanation, because a lot of people don't like, die-hard Rebels fans do not like the Hayden helmet off because it takes away from the Ahsoka Anakin Rebels battle, because it's the same thing, just the opposite side of the helmet, apparently.
Well, this time it's the master unmasking the apprentice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I get that.
Look
I
at
get
that,
why
they
they
did a
had to
flip.
do that, because on the one hand, they wanted the audience to know that yes, Hayden was in the suit sometimes, and they wanted to have some type of connection there to make it further relevant to have Hayden in the suit at all. But you're right. Like, because the thing is that, you know, story, plot, and dialogue are three different things. While dialogue may take a while to figure out how you're going to hash that, the story is something that shouldn't take that long to write either. Like, if you know the stuff and you sit down and talk, even for 3 or 4 days, you could think of a narrative through line for your characters. And in that case, you could get away with having a plot which isn't that consequential if you have a great story to back it up. You know, like great characters. Like yesterday or the day before, they announced what the synopsis was going to be for the Mad Max prequel, Furiosa. And I'm thinking, well, they already put out prequel comics explaining how she came to work for Morton Joe and how he took over the Citadel. And so the only way that's really going to work to be invested in that is if the character journey is really at heart, because it's not going to be your traditional Mad Max car chase movie. Similarly, you could have a plot like this. Obi-Wan has to go out and rescue somebody, but if there's no real character, like when people were kind of perplexed, why is Obi-Wan so hopeless at the start of this series? Because it's not like in Last Jedi where they gave you plenty of reasons why Luke is the way he was, and in the Obi-Wan series they did nothing at all. And yet in the same breath, he's talking to Obi-Wan or to Owen Lars. He has to, Luke has to be trained. I'm like, well, if you're on board with that, then why are you like so down in the dumps over this? And when that one Jedi came to meet you secretly out in the desert, you just totally give him the cold shoulder. It's not like Obi-Wan thought he was being spied on at that moment. He could have given him some tips. So it's like there's not some of that isn't there. And if they'd spent on story, like invested in that aspect of it, you could, because plot is really easy. Any of us could come up with a plot, for a show. And then the dialogue, yeah, that takes a little bit more nuance in terms of writing, but it doesn't feel like they had an idea for a story. Sort of like the Book of Boba Fett. I will still contend that I think that was a Disney decision to force that on Lucasfilm because of how wildly successful Boba Fett's introduction into Mandalorian season 2 was. Because you could see that clearly the people who wrote The Mandalorian, while that series is not perfect, clearly they didn't think it was a good idea structurally to abandon their protagonist and bring in, Mandalorian season 2.5 towards the end. It's like, that feels like a Disney decision because, people love Luke. Grogu is going to sell more toys, and let's bring him back for season 3. It's like, let's completely undercut the ending of season 2 of Mandalorian when he has that great emotional goodbye to Grogu. So there's like a tug of war going on, because unlike Marvel, where you have Feige, who's a wonderkind, and by the time Disney bought Marvel, the success of Phase 1 had already showed them that, hey, Feige knows what he's doing, and they let him do that. With Lucasfilm, they didn't really have that because they didn't give Kennedy any opportunity.
Let me add to that, Favreau.
Yeah.
Right, and they didn't really give him opportunity to do that.
Too.
He was still, forcing it. Like you
Yeah.
said, they're going to now promote the idea that Favreau and Filoni are involved, but then they're not really. And granted, Filoni is not perfect. I mean, he's gone against George on quite a few occasions. I think George was absolutely right that they should have killed Ahsoka off at the end of Clone Wars, because that would have been a real significant gut punch. Because as awful as it is that Anakin killed younglings, it's like, well, the younglings are like extras. They're not characters. We're not emotionally invested in them. To have Vader kill somebody who the audience loves and is invested in, that's going to make you really feel the slight a lot more than anything he did in Revenge of the Sith. And that would have been a great story point. And of course, Filoni, because he's obsessed with Ahsoka, it's like, we can't do that. So,
Right.
but I will. But he's definitely better showrunner, and would be a better showrunner for the live action series going forward than whatever they did here. It just, and I read an article the other day where the writers were trying to justify the potential changes to the canon they were making, and it read like, yeah, you're just trying to justify your job at this point. It's like, you could do that if you like. All I had to do was just name drop some of the comics and stuff, and people would be happy to show that they actually care. Because I'm still convinced that the story group doesn't really have any authority over there. It's more like it's a resource that the writers, directors can choose to engage if they want to. But
Yeah,
so Leland Chi is
there should be
keeper of the holocron, but what does that even mean anymore over there? I don't really know.
There needs to be someone in charge of just canon in general and what you can and can't do, because I mean that was at the during the EU, I think that was George.
Right.
It's like,
I mean, even
you cannot create any more members of Yoda's species. We're not naming them. We're leaving it mysterious. Nope.
Just
we're done.
Yoda and Yaddle.
It's Yoda and Yaddle. Move on about your life. And there was someone to say there, somebody that just goes, this yes, this no.
Yeah, it's like when David Zaslav, the CEO of Discovery, who just had the merger with Warner Brothers. Granted, all the TV stations he owns are just crappy reality TV now, but even he had the foresight to say, we need a Feige type person running DC. Like, we clearly need that going forward, given how messy everything is. It's like, how does Disney not recognize they need that with Lucasfilm when they already have their own example of that with Marvel? If I don't understand. It just, it boggles my mind.
I don't know. Oh, and I'll go back to a point that I keep not having a chance to say. It did not bother me that, well, I don't know that Reva needed to tell us, but it did not bother me the emotional gravitas or the emotional reaction that Obi-Wan had when he found out that Anakin was Vader, because I don't know that he got that from the recordings, at least not in my mind, because when he was knighted as Vader, didn't that happen in Palpatine's office where he would not have had access necessarily to those recordings? He saw the recordings of him killing the younglings in the temple.
He also saw the recording.
Bad things.
There was the hologram
but I don't
immediately
think
after.
He would have seen the Vader part.
He did, because that's in the movie.
Yeah.
In the movie,
it is in Revenge.
He sees the slaughter of the younglings, and then he sees the bit on the hologram where Palpatine says, "Rise, Lord Vader, go do the Empire's bidding," or whatever the line is.
Yeah,
which of course opens a whole other can of worms as to why the Jedi Council has cameras inside Palpatine's office. It's like, oh, I guess Palpatine was right. They were. But and some people, I don't know, I want to ask how you guys feel about this. How do we feel about the fact that this series taking place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, that Obi-Wan apparently had not even heard of Darth Vader still being alive? I thought it was okay, because he's living way, like, if you're from the bright center of the universe, you're on the planet that is farthest from.
Yeah.
Whereas other people are having a problem saying, how could he not have heard of Vader? And I thought, well, it's a big galaxy, and he's kind of, he's a chief enforcer, but it's not like he's going to be everywhere all the time.
Yeah, and his actual mission was to go into hiding and wait for Luke. Yoda made that very clear at the end of Revenge of the Sith. So if you buy the idea that he's cut himself off from the Force, of course he's cut himself off from the holonet and like news and what's been going on. Yeah, I didn't think that was a huge point of contention. One thing I will add though is just on that Revenge of the Sith hologram, I always took that to mean when you see the recording of Anakin fighting the younglings, Yoda and Obi-Wan together, and then a Palpatine having his little rise moment with Lord Vader. That Palpatine that was actually within the Jedi Temple itself. So that's why I thought it was never the officers. As if Palpatine went to just make sure Anakin had carried out Order 66 and to the extent he wanted. Of course, that then goes against even more so the issue with Reva and kids being left alive or escaping Anakin's notice at such close proximity, whether you've got the Force or not. I mean, surely if you are aware of what's going on around you, you'd see. So that is a criticism that the show brought in further down the line. But yeah, just going to the revenge hologram moment, that's how I always took it to be. And I thought that was an interesting touch, which could be explored further, and maybe it will be in comics, of what Palpatine really wanted from the Jedi Temple, aside from, massacre. Because there are those whole archives, and there is the storyline where Vader does go back to the Jedi archives to explore that, and he comes across the what becomes the Grand Inquisitor first, which was a good storyline within that Darth Vader Charles Soule series. Just little character moments like that I think could have been really nicely fit in. And definitely without having a guiding hand through what's going on paper or on screen with comics and the literature and the novels, and what's going on screen, whether it's big or small, you're going to have these clashes. And yeah, I fully agree. It is mystifying how Lucasfilm doesn't have the one kind of supporting bridge for it all, and maybe it's just tables of.
Do they and they don't care?
That's a possibility.
Is it Kathleen and she doesn't care?
Could be.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Mike told me he saw her at Celebration and she seemed pretty upset when he'd see her walking around the show floor. Like, she seemed to be forcing smiles and stuff, because it seems like she's really not into the fandom, understandably. But I also goes back to my theory that Disney has a lot to do with why they're rushing everything and why they're not taking their time with certain things. And another thing, like, if you're going to do a mini series of 6 episodes, they introduced this really neat idea where in the fortress of the Inquisitors, they had like the corpses or the suspended animations of the Jedi bodies, and I'm like, okay, that's actually kind of interesting, but they never came back to it. And it's like,
I think that part is part of the bigger story that they're trying to sprinkle in, that there are things that they have to put into every one of these series that's going to come to the culmination. I think that's the same reason why they went to the abandoned Imperial facility with the Snoke clones.
It did feel like that episode of Mandalorian for sure.
Yeah, I think that's some of the issue too, is that there is a bigger picture that's happening that somebody has kind of suggested that you have to have. Okay, this has to occur in this series. This has to occur because everything is tying it together.
And I think the best way to sum up the laziness over there right now is, I had falsely thought that the Grand Inquisitor, when Vader gives her the title, I thought that was just like a title. I didn't realize that the Inquisitor she stabs early in the series was actually meant to be the Jason Isaacs character.
Yeah.
Well, the Jason Isaacs character, he's a Palin. We've seen them in live action in Revenge of the Sith, and that was actually done with practical makeup. It was not CGI. They had Bruce Spence all decked out in that. And I'm like, which is why I thought when the Grand Inquisitor showed up in this series that he was a different Grand Inquisitor, like a different title or whatever. And it's like, well, what? It wouldn't have been CG. It's like, did they forget? Did they forget that he's that species? Again,
so simple. I think we've talked about this on other shows. It's been discussed on the Thursday night. It's been discussed on Rebels Revisited. Is that we thought that they had done that purposefully and it wasn't bothering us, like toning down Ahsoka's Montrails, like you, whatever, is for stunt purposes, for him to be able to kick some ass and have some good fight scene, and then they didn't do it.
Yeah, because with him, it's just
Yeah.
like with the Palins. I mean, granted, in episode 3, they're wearing these big headdresses, so you're not sure if their head is like a cone shape or maybe that's just the headdress. It could just be a regular size shaped head.
Yeah.
But I figured at the very least he would look, like a Palin, and I thought, okay, and even when they cast Rupert Friend, I mean, no shade on him, but it's like you would think that because the series is only like 4 years before the start of Rebels, that they would try and get some type of consistency in terms of body language and voice or something with the Grand Inquisitor, and I get budget wise, it might have something to do with why they didn't get Jason Isaacs to do it, or maybe scheduling conflicts, who knows.
Right.
But it does, like, again, it doesn't feel like there's an attempt to make it fit. Like, even Vader's body language in the series is very different from in the suit
Yeah.
from in the original trilogy. Watching the way he moves so much more gracefully and quickly. And you could argue, I guess, that as Vader got older, it just became harder for him to move around, maybe. But
it lost a lot of his gravitas,
right.
He's
a lot of rushing.
he's
Yeah.
speed walking in there instead of I'm Darth Vader, I'm bad,
Yeah. And
Now-
so
It contributed to the whole feeling that the show was rushed, and the fact that Vader's moments were so brief, and the shots of his boots, and then the head, and then that's it. He's already there. Capes
and the
rolling.
one time he seemed like Vader to me was in the 3rd episode when he's walking down the street and is wrecking fools, because he's moving a little slower, but
Yeah.
apparently that was deliberate for what he was doing as opposed to how he actually moves.
Yeah.
And again, there's that weird feature where it doesn't look as cinematic. It looks like I have the smooth motion feature turned on my TV when you see the spaceships, and even when I see Darth Vader, the way it, like, something about it, it's like it feels like they needed to add a little bit more of the filmic effect, which is something they add to digitally shot projects in post to give it that little bit crisper. It felt like there's a little bit of that missing to get for the visual consistency. I felt The Mandalorian had that more, and even the Book of Boba Fett had that a bit more than this series. But again, I do think budget wise, this feels like the cheapest one they've done yet. Like we were mentioning, because Hayden and Liam and Ewan, that's going to take a lot of money. Because like I even mentioned in the 3rd episode, you could tell that Ewan and Hayden were on a sound stage when they're fighting in the quarry, and you could tell this is not an outdoor quarry.
Yeah.
But I did think they did a better job at the second showdown in terms of the design. I do like where they were fighting, and the way that you have the cave in with the floor, the sand, everything. I thought that was actually pretty cool, and the choreography was much better. And it looked like they were at least a bit more, looked like they were actually out on location, even though they most certainly were not. So we'll see how this plays out. And I don't think they're going to do a season 2, but the fact that Ewan says he's excited and wants to do something more, then, like I said, just do a Clone Wars live action thing. Why not?
Flashbacks.
And
I
I
don't mind
would
him
love
looking older.
to see
It's fine.
more Ewan and even more Hayden is okay. If you could get it right, give us Hayden as a proper Darth Vader. Don't leave Obi-Wan out of this. Do that.
Or do a season 2 and have it again focus on all the things, Obi-Wan's survival's guilt, all that kind of survivor's guilt. Could I have saved Anakin? All this kind of stuff, but more to the point, have him regret that he didn't go with Satine years and years earlier. Like when he tells her in Clone Wars, if you had said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order. And have him looking at his life now in Tatooine. What did I do? Like what? Like have him that would have been a great justification for why he was going hopeless and cutting himself off, because he felt some type of regret. See, these are the kind of things you think of when you actually just sit down and talk about it for a while, like we're doing, and that's what you need to do when you're in a right. Like even when I was in film school, we would go into like the cafe, we would sit and talk and hash stuff out, and our creative juices were flowing, and you just think of these things, and it's just.
But that will get shot down because of so much of this is it became a more action, because you have to, whether it's a Disney rule or just a rule of whatever now, whoever's doing any sort of film, you have to cater to people who have never seen any of this content ever before. Obi-Wan
you can still have the action for sure. I just imagine how much more dramatic that fight with Vader would be, with Obi-Wan's carrying all that emotional baggage with him, and then you have all the stuff with Vader, like from the Soleil comics, and him having his own, and Vader having his tinge of regrets of the things that he has done, but not willing to admit it, and then bringing that back to a head. That would get you just wow, because it's like yeah, it's cool to see them kind of showdown, but I didn't have any emotional investment in it because there was really nothing to the characters.
Yeah, well, there's nothing more the series has added at that point. It's kind of
Yeah.
upon us to know the comics or to know some extra material from the outside. And I think, yeah, Dave, that's exactly the difficulty, I guess, because in a way, this is still a mass market piece of content. And they want to bring people into Star Wars. And so, but then again, Catherine, as you're saying, you don't need like a whole episode dedicated to Obi-Wan regret over this other life he could have
Well,
had.
right.
Just
I
a
think
couple of scenes, a couple of lines, it can
right,
really add something.
and the perfect example was that they just let Marvel release their first MCU movie, which is completely dependent on you having seen the miniseries WandaVision. You know, because Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, nobody's going to understand what the plot of that movie is or what's going on with Wanda if they've not seen that TV series. And if they're comfortable letting Marvel do that, then they got to express some comfort in letting Star Wars do that, since they're already, adding so many TV series. I think it's just inevitable at some point that whenever the next Star Wars movie comes, it'll have some type of crossover, cross-pollination or whatever with some of their TV shows. Because they didn't give any updates about the film, any of the upcoming movies at Celebration. So,
it's all about what they're doing with TV right now and how that's going across. As in the comments, we're seeing that could have done so much more with Obi-Wan. He felt he accepted Anakin's fall too easily. It seems to be that the more time given, okay, we've got six episodes, it's a longer time. There are more people, it seems, when they do a feature film, tightening it up and keeping the story tight, but then telling more and giving you more of the emotion in there when you have to do it, when they're like, oh, we'll just, it doesn't matter how long the episode is. It's not even like a half-hour regular made for TV sitcom or drama that's an hour. Each episode has to be so many minutes. No, it's for streaming. We can make each episode however many minutes we want to be. We can tell this, we can throw in that, we can put in that. Now, what I will say that I did enjoy, I think, the most of from this entire series is Ewan McGregor, and how he really, I think, put a lot of work into tying his performance from the prequels to Alec Guinness's performance in Star Wars in A New Hope, is really make Obi-Wan's mannerisms, I performed it this way as me, I am now doing this, and I am now adding more of an Alec Guinness performance in to make this character kind of seem that it goes through. Maybe he couldn't do that in the story, maybe he couldn't do that with the physical things, but as his performance, I think that was a nice little touch.
Yeah, I think everyone acted the heck out of this as much as they could. It's just when the script is leaving you wanting for a lot more, then those kind of frustrations kind of boil into it and color your perception of the whole series. But yeah, bringing Ewan back, he was fully on board from everything he was saying beforehand, and from every second he gave on screen, he was fantastic. And I think most of the other cast were incredible as well. It would have been fantastic to see more of Joel Edgerton, because he's a fantastic character actor who can really disappear into roles. And what we alluded to about that, clash of ideals about Luke's future between Uncle Owen and Obi-Wan would have been a nice touch to see, and that could have been something that's explored for a back and forth between both Ben, Ben, Uncle Ben. The transformation of Obi-Wan into this kind of quirky hermit that is rumored to be out in the desert, and having more time with him in isolation and with Qui-Gon, or at least ruminating a little bit more, would have added so much more connective tissue to bridge the prequel Obi-Wan to the original Obi-Wan. So, but I definitely appreciated everything Ewan McGregor gave. But maybe it's a case of, okay, we need other stories in Star Wars now, other characters. Let's try and leave the original saga the way it was, because at the moment we're just kind of tying up the little the little laces and ribbons on the top, but not necessarily having the character through work kind of through the series.
Well, that's one thing that excites me about the news and the stories that have been coming around lately, that the thing that we have heard about movies or projects, I think they're still calling it a project right now, not necessarily a movie or a show, that Taika is going to get a new Star Wars project. And he's like, I don't want to do anything with anybody with the main, what we know of. I want to go new. I want to come out with some new characters and talk about them and tell about them.
Yeah. And another good point you raised, Gio, is, you know, the Owen Ben relationship, because clearly in the original movie, Owen has a much more disparaging opinion of Obi-Wan than he does at the end of this series, when he's actually willing to let Obi-Wan meet Luke. And it's like, okay, so he's kind of come around a little bit, but then, oh well, now he's just a crazy old man. And yet Luke, I assume Luke would remember meeting Obi-Wan at some point, because it's clear that Luke knew who Obi-Wan was in the original movie. Okay, he met him. So it makes me wonder what happened to further sour that relationship, because even though Obi-Wan didn't end up saving him, the fact that Obi-Wan showed up and showed that he cared, let Owen feel that, okay, I may not like this particular arrangement or the implications of it, but I appreciate that you're here, which was a nice touch to that. And of course, Joel Edgerton was able to shine so much more in the little bit of scenes he had here than he did in the episode 2 and 3, because he had better director for that, which again makes me wish we got more of that relationship in this series.
Yeah.
Sort of like in the Han Solo movie, where they show that clearly Han is going to have some type of radical transformation between that movie and episode 4, because he gives away 99% of the wealth that he earned. He only keeps enough to buy the Falcon, and that's it. And not even buy it, just to gamble for the win. Whereas in episode 4, he's so selfish that he doesn't want to help anybody. I'm just in it for the roar and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, and granted, I think they said they're not interested in doing anything with Alden Ehrenreich again, which is a little unfortunate.
Yes and no, we'll see, because anytime that anyone who was involved in Solo showed up on a fan stage or a panel, I mean, the entire audience is screaming at Ron Howard, Solo 2, Solo 2, Solo 2. These people have to hear that. And I think Kathleen may have been on the stage at the same time.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're thinking, you didn't show up for Solo 1.
May I don't know, but so we have gone, not surprisingly, we have gone over time, and that's fine, because there's a lot to talk about with this and a lot of good content, but we're probably to the point where we should go for kind of final thoughts and wrap ups.
Gio?
All right, so I'm gonna take the positives away from Obi-Wan and hold on to them, which are, in a way, the kind of story beats that are familiar to Star Wars and that remind you of maybe nostalgic feelings of the films. I think they did that strongly, whether you want to say fan service or not. It's still they delivered in that sense, and if we could get more on characters and motivations, and maybe a little more just nuance and not just kind of just blunt over the head plot running forward on afterburners, just getting through the story, because almost like they feel like they have to get through the story, that would be good. And there is a lot of potential in what Star Wars could have coming further down the line. The Taika project sounds great. He's someone who completely reinvigorated the Thor films. So he's proven that he can juggle genres and characters and give you the kind of lighthearted comedy that is still a kind of nostalgic feeling from some of the original Star Wars, and I think Rebels did some of that really well going forward. But yeah, I'll try and focus on the fun stuff that I enjoyed in the latter two episodes, when I kind of thought, okay, this is not going the way I wanted, but it's all right. It's some kind of Star Wars, and they'll tie things together to make it like a shiny product for us all to gobble up. And that's okay. There can be other stories in the future that bring a lot more in terms of character and drama. The whole idea of prequels tying things up, I mean, that's something that was heavily criticized by George Lucas in the beginning, for having a prequel trilogy and wanting to set things up, because the stakes for characters aren't really there. You know who's going to survive and who's not. So if they don't want to look into like character moments, then have a whole new roster of people, and then give us something unexpected. But yeah, I'll hold on to the positive Star Wars Obi-Wan. So the locations, whether they looked great or not, is another story. Some of the choreography echoing Revenge of the Sith, as you mentioned, and giving us that little poetic touch to the final scene between Vader and Obi-Wan, echoing one of the most iconic scenes in Rebels, but also reminding us that, okay, so the apprentice took off the left side of the face, the master took off the right, but it was the son who was ultimately able to lift the Darth Vader identity off in Return of the Jedi, and redeem Anakin Skywalker. Just keeping those positives going. I think there's stuff to revisit in Obi-Wan that we can all appreciate, as well as things to ruminate on what could have been.
Yeah. Well, and I'll go with positives really as well. Is yes, the part 5 and part 6 especially was a little bit fan servicey, but it didn't seem as fan servicey as Rise of Skywalker. I mean, it wasn't beat you over the head fan service. Yes, he said hello there, which I needed that moment at the end of it. I
like that he had a tinge of Alex's voice when he said that too.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about in performances, right?
Yeah.
Even though that was probably the only line where he did that, but that was still kind of neat.
is he's got the performances of the actors. I mean, I think a lot of the problems with the third sister were writing. I liked Moses's performance for the most part. Hayden's performance as young Anakin, even though they chose not to de-age him, was good. I mean, you didn't have the cringy acting comments that a lot of people talked about Hayden in the prequels. Is they were doing everything they could to make this. So I enjoyed it. If you want to talk about more of this, I know we're wrapping up and we'll let Catherine wrap up in a second. But again, tomorrow night, Rebels Revisited, going to talk more about a Kenobi wrap up and how it relates to Star Wars Rebels. That Star Wars Funko show is getting ready to drop its next episode, where they will mention the show, I'm sure, because they are going to do a wrap up of Obi-Wan, all-time Obi-Wan Funko Pops. So you'll get some of that talk, and you can get more of this kind of content there. And that's what we want, is more content, not just here on the Virtual Cantina Network, because you're watching just for that. But we're getting more Star Wars content, and the fact that we can sit here and talk about the things that we didn't like, and some of you out there agree with us, and some of you don't, and you like some things, we like some things. You don't see some of the things at all. Like I did not see the Obi-Wan doesn't know Anakin is Vader. It didn't breeze right by me. Sticks. Catherine just saw that immediately. It's like, no, that's wrong. And we're all gonna experience it different, and that is okay, because that's what Star Wars is for. And I'll let you wrap it up, Catherine.
I really like that observation Gio made about the mask. I thought it was the
I
left
really do.
side of his mask that got ripped off in this series, wasn't it? Or was it the right? I
So
thought-
it's whatever it was from
it's the
they,
left.
they
It's
showed
the opposite
photos.
to Ahsoka.
Whatever
The
Ahsoka
opposite.
did was opposite with Obi-Wan because
It was the left.
Obi-Wan,
I think I misspoke. Yeah,
I think,
she
did
she
the
took off the
side
right.
where it
the
did
right. Yeah.
scarring.
Okay, yeah, that's a really great positive for that. And for the positives that are in this series, like the flashback stuff with Obi-Wan and Anakin, but that was more of a nostalgia thing, even though it does tie into the story a bit. Overall, and yeah, seeing Vader, choke some fools out and be vicious is a nice throwback, but because for me, I want to be invested in what's going on to really care about it. Like for the longest time, even when the sequel trilogy was announced, as a fan, I didn't need to see Luke pick up a lightsaber and wreck shop again because I was fine with the way that the character was portrayed as his full-fledged Jedi self in Return of the Jedi. I was fine playing by Star Wars action figures all those years because I liked the story that was invested in it. And since I just didn't feel that was here, I feel that for me, the negatives of the series just outweigh all the positives. So it's like, man, I didn't feel it had as much replay value as The Mandalorian. And so, I mean, I'll probably binge the whole thing in one sitting sometime just to see what it kind of feels like, even though, So, and Ewan's acting hit and miss for certain scenes, but I do like that he had a little bit of Alec there at the end. But it's just, I've already said everything that needs to be said. I can't do it again.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Like I said, there is more content on this topic coming up in the days. Check out the Virtual Cantina Network. And as always, watch us on the Facebook page for more updates on when and where you can see all of that thing. Thank you all. And until then, may the force be with you.
Thanks. May the force be with you all.